You're not really going to make a scene in front of the hostess, are you? That's what my son said to me, right there on the sidewalk, right in front of the brunch place with the yellow umbrellas and the cheerful jazz music piping through the speakers. It was my 74th birthday. I was wearing a soft lavender blouse and the pearl earrings his father gave me on our 30th anniversary. I had even put on blush, something I hadn't done in years because he said he'd made reservations. He said the whole family would be there, that Lily, my granddaughter, had made me something special, that it was going to be low-key, but lovely. Instead, we pulled into a brick building off the highway, and I knew. I knew the moment I saw the glass door with evergreen, transitional, living, written in faded vinyl letters. I turned to Peter, confused. I laughed, nervously. Are we picking someone up? I asked. Is this a joke? He didn't look at me. He didn't smile. He just got out, grabbed my suitcase from the back seat, and said, "Let's not make this harder than it has to be." That's when I froze. My fingers still clutched the little gift bag I had brought for Lily hand-knitted gloves I stayed up 3 nights to finish. I looked at the sidewalk, then at the glass doors, then at my son. "Peter," I whispered. "You said he cut me off. I said you'd be safer. I said we'd celebrate. We will, just later." The automatic door hissed open behind him. A woman in scrubs walked out with a clipboard and a tight-lipped smile. "Oh, good," she said. "You must be the new resident." Resident, not guest, not visitor, resident. I looked at my son. He gave me that smile. The one he uses when he talks to customer service people. Like I was an issue, something to be resolved. Efficiently and politely. "Don't do this," I said quietly, heart pounding in my chest. "Not today. Please, not today." He shrugged. "You'll be fine. They've got group activities, movie nights." "You've been slowing down anyway." "Mom." The word hit me like a slap. Slowing down. Slowing down is forgetting your keys, not being discarded like an expired carton of milk. "Peter," I tried again. Voice cracking. "I'm your mother." He sighed, looked at his watch, and said, "Look, I have a conference call in 20. Can we not do this now?" I looked around. No one intervened. No one even blinked. A woman walking by with a small child pulled her closer like I might collapse in the parking lot. I didn't cry. I walked. I walked through those glass doors with my head high, not because I wasn't breaking inside, but because I refused to give him the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and steamed carrots. They showed me a room with beige walls, a single dresser, and a laminated calendar taped to the door. "Lunch is at noon. Boggle tournament at 3, the nurse said, like it was something to look forward to. I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, the knitted gloves still in my lap. My phone buzzed, a text from Peter. "Hope you got settled." Lily says, "Happy birthday." No picture, no voice note, not even a heart emoji. Just a reminder that even the people who should know you best can one day decide you're too much, or worse, not enough. I remember when Peter was 6, he had the flu and kept vomiting through the night. I sat beside his bed, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead, whispering stories between my prayers. At one point, around 3 a.m., he looked up at me with glassy eyes and said, "You're the only one who stays when I'm sick." I smiled and replied, "Always will." He fell asleep in my lap, his small hand wrapped around my pinky finger. That same pinky would later cramp from filling out college forms, from holding the mop when I cleaned offices after hours, from gripping the steering wheel on icy roads driving him to debate tournaments even when I hadn't slept a wink. Peter never knew how close I came to losing that house. After James, my husband, passed, I had $462 in the bank, no job, and a mortgage balance that laughed in my face. I sold my sewing machine to cover that winter's heating bill, canceled my cable, my dental appointments, and my birthday plans for 5 years straight. And when Peter lost his academic scholarship his junior year because he partied too hard, I didn't shame him. I didn't even yell. I just quietly pulled out the envelope in my closet, the one marked Alaska trip. Someday, $2,700 in wrinkled bills and change. That was supposed to be for me, for the trip James and I never got to take. A train ride through glaciers, a cabin with hot cocoa, a quiet reminder that life was still full of wonder. I handed it all over and said, "It's okay, we'll figure it out." Peter cried. He hugged me like I was the ground he stood on, told me he'd pay me back one day. But time has a way of eroding promises when no one's looking, especially promises made to mothers. When Lily was born, I bought her first crib, painted her nursery while Peter and his wife were at the hospital. I hand-sewed the curtains, baked a pie for every pediatric visit. They called me Grandma Grace, and for a while, it felt like I had purpose again. I was there when Lily took her first steps, held her when she was afraid of thunder, sang lullabies from my own mother's lips, warm and steady. Then came the distance. It didn't start with a fight. It never does. It started with skipped phone calls, late responses. "Oh, sorry. Mom, we meant to invite you. It must have slipped our minds." Suddenly, I wasn't needed for babysitting. Then I wasn't needed for holidays. Then I wasn't asked for opinions, only told what was already decided. And still, I stayed kind. I told myself, they're busy. Life is busy, but something else had shifted. I wasn't family anymore. I was an obligation, a soft, aging presence that took up space but made no sound. I started mailing birthday cards instead of delivering them. I left voicemails that went unanswered. And when I fell one afternoon while gardening sprained my wrist, I told no one. I wrapped it myself, made soup with my left hand, watched reruns until the pain dulled. Because the truth is, when you've given people everything, it's humiliating to admit they've forgotten. But I never forgot them. I still had that family photo by my nightstand, the one from Lily's 3rd birthday. I still kept Peter's baby shoes in the top drawer of my dresser. Still used the same worn measuring cup James and I bought from a flea market in 1972. The world had moved on, but I stayed. Stayed in that house, watered the plants, fixed the gutters, kept it exactly how they remembered it. Just in case they came back. Just in case someone knocked one day and said, "We miss you." But the only knock that came was from my son. And he wasn't holding flowers. He wasn't smiling. He had a suitcase in one hand and a lie in the other. The days started to blur. Breakfast at 7, medication at 8, crafts and cards at 10, lukewarm soup at noon, and the hours in between, just silence. Not the kind you notice at first, the kind that settles. Like dust in a room no one visits anymore. I kept my hair neat, washed my own clothes, signed up for every activity, even the ones I didn't like. Not because I enjoyed them, but because I wanted anyone to say my name. The first weekend passed. No visitors. By the second, I stopped telling the nurses someone might come. One afternoon, I tried calling Peter just to ask how Lily was. The line rang once, then straight to voicemail. I left a message. "I'm doing fine. Just thinking about Lily. Tell her I miss her voice." I didn't hear back. That night, I sat by the window. The same window I looked out of on my birthday. The one with the view of the empty parking lot. I watched the streetlights flicker, counted every car that turned in and turned away. The hardest part wasn't being here. It was realizing no one noticed I was gone. One Tuesday, there was a birthday party for a resident named Harold. His daughter came, brought a homemade cake, framed photos, even balloons. I clapped politely, smiled as she wiped icing off his chin, laughed when Harold joked about sneaking out with her to get ice cream. But later that night, I sat in the hallway and cried into a napkin from lunch. It was the first time I cried since arriving, not because I envied Harold, but because I had once been that daughter, and Peter had once been that boy. And now. I was just a footnote in their week, something to be checked in on when time allowed. It got worse. A nurse casually mentioned Peter had stopped answering their calls, that they needed permission to refill some prescriptions, and hadn't been able to reach him. I asked if they'd tried texting. She nodded. He read it, she said, but never replied. Like I was a subscription he'd canceled, but they kept emailing him just in case. One morning, I overheard two aides whispering in the break room. "They didn't know I was there," one of them said. "She's still waiting for her son to visit." Poor thing. I heard he and the wife are trying to sell the house. My heart stopped. I leaned back against the wall. That house. It wasn't just drywall and floorboards. It was every scraped knee, every Christmas morning, every hour I'd stayed up sewing costumes or fixing sinks. That house was mine, still is legally. But Peter must have assumed I'd forgotten that too, a week later. During movie night, something inside me snapped. The residents were watching an old Western, Clint Eastwood, dust and gunpowder and righteous vengeance, and suddenly I couldn't breathe, because I didn't feel like the hero. I felt like the tumbleweed, rolled in, unnoticed, rolled out, unmissed. I stood up and left, walked the halls with my slippers scuffing the floor, not caring who stared. I ended up in the rec room, empty. I sat at the piano. My fingers hovered above the keys. I hadn't played since James died. But that night, I played. Nothing grand. Just a lullaby I used to hum to Peter when he had nightmares. Soft and broken, halfway through. I felt something warm on my cheek. I touched it. Tears. I hadn't even realized, after that. I stopped calling, stopped waiting. But I didn't stop watching. I began to notice things. Like the mail cart, one day. A staff member tossed a bundle of letters on the counter and said, "Forward the sale documents to Mr. Wallace. The son's realtor needs them signed. Mr. Wallace, the director of the facility." I approached him the next morning. I asked, calmly, "Is someone trying to sell my house?" He blinked, then checked a folder. "Oh, it appears your son submitted a power of attorney form. Says you're no longer able to manage your own affairs." My stomach turned cold. I never signed anything. He looked at me again. Slower this time. "I can double-check that." Of course. But I saw it in his eyes. He believed Peter, not me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window until sunrise. No knitting, no reading, no praying, just thinking. About every moment I stayed silent, every excuse I made for Peter, every time I told myself, they're just busy. And now he was selling my life piece by piece while I sipped lukewarm tea and clapped for strangers' birthdays. But then, the parking lot lights flickered on, and a car pulled in, not Peter's, smaller, older. A little rust along the bumper. It paused, then parked. The back door opened. A small figure stepped out. A child, brown coat, little black boots, hair tied back in a ribbon I had sewn. Lily. She stood there, just outside the car, and she looked up, right at my window. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, she just stared. And I stared back, my breath caught in my throat, because the driver's door opened next, and the person who stepped out wasn't Peter. I stepped closer to the window. My breath fogged the glass as I stared down into the dark parking lot. The girl in the brown coat didn't move. She just looked up. And I knew by the way her head tilted, the way she stood with her hands deep in her pockets like she always did when she was nervous. It was Lily. My Lily. I pressed my palm to the window pane. And then the driver stepped into view. Not Peter, not his wife. It was Mrs. Jenkins, our old neighbor, the one who used to lend me sugar and send Lily home with fresh peaches every August. I gasped, not because I was shocked she was there, but because it meant someone had noticed, someone had listened. 10 minutes later. The front desk rang my room. "There's someone here to see you. Says she's family." I didn't even grab my cane. I flew down that hallway on sheer adrenaline. When I turned the corner, Lily ran straight into my arms. No words, just trembling shoulders against my chest, tears on my cardigan, and a whisper I'll never forget. "Daddy told me you wanted to live here," but I knew he was lying. We sat in the visitor room, floral couches, too much air freshener. Mrs. Jenkins poured tea from a thermos like we were on a picnic. She looked older but not colder. "I hope this is okay," she said. "I didn't know how else to reach you. Your son blocked your number from Lily's tablet. She couldn't even send you messages." My heart tightened. "I suspected," I said quietly. I just didn't want to believe it. Lily pulled a folded sheet of paper from her coat. She laid it in my lap. "I found this in the printer last night," she whispered. It was a scanned document, my signature, on a power of attorney form by... But it wasn't mine, it was a forgery, and the notary stamp fake. "Daddy and Mom said you were confused," Lily said softly. "But you're not. You're not confused. You remember everything." I closed my eyes. Something settled inside me then. Not anger, not grief, resolve. The next morning, I called Karen. She used to be my student back when I taught business law at the community college. Now she was an attorney, one of the good ones. She answered on the second ring. "Ms. Grace." "Is everything okay?" "Not quite," I replied. "But I'm ready to make it right. Within 48 hours. Karen had the document reviewed and flagged as fraudulent. She filed for an emergency hearing to revoke Peter's assumed control. In the meantime, she advised me not to confront him directly. "Let the facts speak first," she said. "Then, you do the rest." While the legal wheels turned, I made some calls of my own. To the bank confirming my name was still on the deed. To my accountant, who still kept copies of the original estate documents James left behind. And to my old friend Ellen, who just so happened to be the local journalist who ran the People and Justice column in the town paper. I didn't give her details, just asked, "If someone was trying to take your voice away?" "How would you take it back?" she answered without hesitation. "You'd speak louder, in a place where they have to listen." A week later, Peter showed up, unannounced, flustered, holding flowers. I was sitting in the courtyard with Lily and Mrs. Jenkins when he walked up. He didn't greet me. He looked straight at Mrs. Jenkins. "What are you doing here?" She smiled. "Cool as autumn. I could ask you the same." He turned to Lily. "You weren't supposed to come here." "I know," she said. "That's why I did." Then, finally, he looked at me. His voice dropped. "Mom, we need to talk. Privately." I nodded, led him into the rec room. He sat down like a man ready to charm his way out of a DUI. "I know this seems bad," he began, "but it was just temporary. I was handling things while I held up a hand. You forged my name." He froze. You lied to your daughter, blocked me from speaking to her, told people I was mentally unstable, all while trying to sell the home I paid off with 2 decades of sweat. His face changed. The charm cracked. "You have no idea what it's like to juggle all this." I was trying to protect you. I leaned forward. "No. Peter. You were trying to protect your wallet." I stood, and this time my voice didn't shake. "Your power of attorney has been revoked. The realtor's deal is dead, and Karen Wallace will be contacting you for a full audit of all financial attempts made in my name." He stood too, angry now. "You can't do this." I met his eyes. "I just did." He stormed out, didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. Mrs. Jenkins and Lily watched him disappear through the glass doors. And I exhaled. Not because it was over, but because it had finally begun that night. Lily sat beside me in my room. "I'm proud of you," she said. I took her hand. "No, sweetheart, I'm proud of you. You remembered who I was, when even my own son tried to erase me." She smiled, then asked something I'll never forget. "Grandma, are you coming home?" I didn't answer. Not right away. Because the truth was, home would never be the same, but I still had one more move to make. And when it landed, Peter would come running. 3 days after Peter stormed out of the nursing home, his name was no longer on the listing for my property. The sale had collapsed. The agent dropped him. And the bank, after reviewing the legal notice from Karen, froze the account he had opened in my name. Turns out, attempting to commit real estate fraud using falsified documents, that doesn't go unnoticed for long. And suddenly, Peter was the one explaining himself. Not to me. To the state board. Karen filed a formal complaint on my behalf. The forged power of attorney form, the attempted sale, the false medical statements, all submitted with copies, timestamps, and notarized testimonies. Mrs. Jenkins gave a full statement. Lily did too calm, clear, and brave beyond her years. And the final nail, a voice message from Peter's own phone, recorded unknowingly by Lily. He had left his phone on the kitchen counter one night while ranting to his wife. "She doesn't need the house," he said. "She doesn't even know what day it is anymore. I'm doing her a favor," when asked what he'd do if I found out. He laughed. "She'll never fight back. She's too tired. And by the time she figures it out, it'll all be done. Except I wasn't tired. I was ready." The court ruled in my favor. All control returned to me. Peter was barred from making any further financial decisions on my behalf ever again. The court didn't press criminal charges, but they issued a public warning. His name, once attached to a reputable marketing firm, was now attached to the local newspaper headline, "Man Forges Mother's Signature in Attempt to Sell Her Home Reputation Gone." Career on indefinite hold. His wife, who once called me Mom, with a sweet smile, left quietly 2 weeks later. Packed up her things, moved in with her sister. She didn't leave a note, didn't even say goodbye. But I wasn't surprised, because betrayal breaks more than trust. It breaks homes. It breaks children. And in that silence, Peter started calling again. The first voicemail was short. "Hey, I know you're upset. Can we talk?" The second one 2 days later sounded different. "Look, I messed up. But you don't need to ruin my whole life." And the third one came at midnight. "I lost my job. Cassie's gone. I don't know what to do. I didn't mean to hurt you. Mom, please, call me back." I didn't, but I listened, because I wanted to understand how someone I raised, someone I loved, could leave me behind like luggage on a sidewalk. And then begged to come back only when the world stopped clapping for him, that following Sunday. I hosted a small lunch at the home I still owned. Mrs. Jenkins brought rolls. Lily helped me set the table. It was quiet, peaceful, until the doorbell rang. I didn't ask who it was. I already knew. Peter stood there, disheveled, pale, hands shaking slightly as he held a paper bag with something inside. He looked smaller. "Hi, Mom." I said nothing. "I brought your favorite," he stammered. "Apple crumble from Wilson's." I took the bag, set it down beside the door, and stepped outside. He followed me into the garden. The wind was light, sun falling across the roses I had trimmed the day before. He sat on the bench. I stayed standing. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." I looked at him. For a long time. And then I said, "You knew who I was when I was useful. When I was cooking, babysitting, paying bills, making sure birthdays had decorations." He lowered his eyes. "But when I got older, when I got quieter, you treated me like a burden, not a mother." He wiped at his face. "I didn't mean." "But you did, Peter." I stepped forward, kneeling just slightly. "So we were eye level. I gave you everything. Now I'm giving you something else." He blinked. "What freedom? From me?" He stared. "I don't understand." "You don't need to," I said. "Just know that I'm done fighting for a seat at a table I built." He left the garden without another word, left the apple crumble behind. Lily came out 20 minutes later. She saw the bag, looked up at me. "Was that Dad?" "Yes," I said. "And he's going to be okay." She wrapped her arms around my waist. "But are you?" I smiled into her hair. For the first time in years. I whispered, "I think I am." The garden is quieter in the mornings. You can hear the bees before the birds, the soft rustle of rosemary leaves. The creak of the old bench I finally painted robin's egg blue. Sometimes I sit with a book. Sometimes I don't open it at all. I just breathe. Not waiting for a knock. Not listening for a ringtone. Just being. And that, to me, is freedom. After the dust settled, I moved back home, but I didn't return to the same life. I said goodbye to the parts of it that no longer served me. The guilt, the people who only reached out when they needed something, the ache of always trying to prove I still mattered. Now I wake up when the light hits the curtains just right. I take long walks with Lily when she visits. She's learning to bake now, crooked cookies, sticky counters, and all. She still asks about her father, and I always answer honestly but gently, because children shouldn't carry the weight of their parents' mistakes. Once a week, I volunteer at the community library, not because I have to, but because there's something lovely about handing a child a book and watching their eyes light up like they've just been handed a key. One little boy asked me last week if I used to be a queen. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. But deep down, something about it felt true, because there is power in reclaiming your worth. To those listening right now, maybe you felt forgotten, maybe you gave everything and were left with nothing but silence. Maybe you've been told your time is done, that you're in the way, too loud, too soft, too old. If that's you, I want you to hear this from someone who's lived it. You are not disposable. You are not invisible. You are not too late. Your story doesn't end when someone else walks away. It ends when you decide to stop waiting for them to come back. And that's when something beautiful begins. So if you've ever felt like the background in your own life, I see you. If you've been pushed aside, overlooked, called too much or not enough, I've been there. And I promise you, the moment you stop begging for a seat at the table and build your own, the whole world shifts. And it gets quieter, surer, softer, but never smaller. If this story touched something in you, leave a comment. Tell me what part felt like your own. Or better yet, send it to someone who needs a reminder that peace isn't given, it's chosen, and we are never too old to choose ourselves. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, you know what to do? I'll be right here, with a cup of tea and a garden full of second chances.